Hello everybody, this is my first tutorial on editing photos in Lightroom. This particular photo was about to be deleted as it's pretty boring and flat, and I decided to give it another shot and make it moody and dark. Let's see how it goes. So first of all, let's start with copying and straightening the image because it's a bit awkward. So we can use this as reference, but I think it's too much. Something like that. And this part is pretty boring and empty. There is this mountain in the back that is interesting, but not so much. I want to emphasize the view eye on this part of the frame. So let's cut it something like that. Okay. Next, let's cool it a bit. I think this is enough, and let's take it darker. A lot darker. Well, the view eye should be around here. This is the main part for me, so I want everything else to be pretty dark. So I think this is fine. And next we can use a preset, the smooth transition that I created before, and it's just basically taking the blacks up so that they're not so crushed black, and do the same for the white, so that everything transits more smoothly in the frame. And since we removed some of the contrast, let's bring back something like, I think 21 is fine. I don't want to crush the details too much because we need them eventually. And let's move to the color grading. I always tend for the shadows to be cold and the highlights to be warm, but in this particular case I'm going to keep both shadow and highlights as a cold. So the shadows will be something pretty dark, like so, and the highlights I want also a cold tone, but not so cold as the shadows. And it's give a lot of cold tone to the frame. Next is sharpening, and I always like to hold the option key and first mask what do I want to sharp, because we don't need to sharp everything like that. So the white is parts that we sharpen and the blacks are there that we don't. And by actually applying the mask is to reduce also the noise in the frame, so that we don't need to sharpen the sky, we don't want to sharpen a lot of the ground, we just want the building to be sharp. So when you sharp void areas, it's also create noise. So by that we are also removing a lot of the potential noise in the frame. So something like that. And I tend to keep these values by default because eventually when I export the frame, I also sharp it to screen standard. We remove the chromatic aberration, and let's do some calibration. So for the shadows, I always tend to play with these extremely to the scale and see what looks good for me. And the green ones obviously are not suitable here, but I think some purple tone could be nice, because after all it's evening, it's sunset, and we want to have some kind of rays of light, like last minute light that coming in. The reds, well, this one is very bluish, so I think I see that the most effect here is on the sky, on the clouds, and I want them to look somewhat grayish, like, you know, it's going to be a storm soon for the drama, and it's nice. And the green ones, yeah, this is actually pretty nice. It also brings back the original colors of the door. And the blue one, I think I'm going to keep at 0. We don't need to touch it at all. Okay, so we have the base image, and now let's continue to emphasize the viewer eye on this area. And by that we can start by adding some gradients, and by holding the shift key we have a straight line. So let's drop some light from the foregrounds and another one from this side, and another one from this side. And there is something that bugs me here, so let's remove it. Yeah, looks better. And there is another spot in here, no idea what it is, but let's just have a small brush and eliminate that so it doesn't take any attention from the viewer. Next thing would be to add some artificial light from the side. So we will zoom out, take a radial filter, do something ovalish. I think it's a proper name to say ovalish. Well, oval. And I think something like that. So it looks like it's coming from above. Let's invert it so that it's only affecting inside the radial, not outside. And bring up the blacks so it's giving the effect that something is coming from the side. And we can turn the warmth, and it looks much better now. Let's just bring it back. Yeah, I like it. It looks nice. And we can turn off and turn on, and it's doing a lot of impact on the frame. Really nice. Okay, next let's make the sky a bit darker. I'm holding the shift again while dragging, and the haze a bit, and maybe drop the exposure. Yeah, and next we can do some brush. I have a Wacom tablet, and just for now let's just put some value just to see what we are painting on. We can also press the O key and then see our red mask. And let's now focus on the black areas on the building. Something like that. And press the O key again. And let's drop the shadows a bit. And the blacks. No, the blacks doesn't look so good. Drop the exposure. And let's get another one. All the option key to reset. And we can turn on now the highlights. Yeah. Let's give it a nice look. And let's lighten it a bit in here. And another one. And now let's go on the grass. Yeah. Okay. Next one would be again to darken some areas of grass that we don't want to be visible so much, that are not so important for us. Also some of these small rocks. Yeah. And I think last thing to do would be another radial to do some vignetting. And we can again zoom out. And this time not to invert radial. It's actually already on something there. The exposure, and let's try to do something like that, because I don't like this part. I think it's not so important. The viewer should come from the side and look at the front of the building and then continue with the leading lines. So I don't want this to be distracting so much, and this looks pretty nice. Yeah, so there you have it. This is the result.